All right, everybody. Hello and welcome to Geopolitics. And it's not close enough.
Yeah, look.
I don't like. Somebody put a comment that they said you need to have a cover on the mic, whatever. I like that's foreign language to me. Talk to Elizabeth, not me. So, but I never like the mic so close to my out here. So
Well,
anyway,
you also have a little bit of a loud voice sometimes.
oh,
Not all the time.
well, you're
of
saying
course,
it nicely, but that's okay. You can say it to me. I can take it. I do have a loud voice. So. Anyway, very, very excited to be with you guys and Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
To all. Hope you enjoyed your time with your family, loved ones, friends, and so forth. And we are so excited to be back here because this is now 2024. And even for us here, guys, on this channel here, we're thinking about, approaching things differently for the sake of knowledge, because we asked ourselves, what have we contributed for the past year to our audience?
Yeah.
So, and this is like a simple question. What have you learned from us throughout the past year? And we hope that we have contributed somehow to your knowledge overall. So we are very, very excited to be here with you guys. So.
Well, you know what? I actually sat and thought about that answer for myself because I'm here, but a lot of people don't know that I also produce the show.
Oh, yeah.
And so...
Yeah, she's the producer.
Yes.
Oh, faithfully, there is no other producer. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, we're so grateful because Elizabeth has been approached by some others to produce on their channel, paying her top dollars. And she said no. She said no. So it shows you just the commitment. Thank you.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. And so I was sitting and thinking, what are we really doing here?
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest things that we are doing is giving people a chance to wake up to what's really happening around the world.
That's important.
And a lot of you guys already are awake, and that's why you're here with us. But people share our shows, our shorts, our videos with other people, and that helps other people sort of wake up to what's going on in the world. So for me, that's why I do this, is because it's important. The world is going in a direction that I really don't like, and I want to do something about it. And so this is doing something about it. Indeed. So I just wanted to share with you guys, that's what I'm doing this for. And, David, I know you have your own reasons too, but I don't know what's more meaningful than changing the direction that the world is going to a better direction than where it's headed right now.
Well, speaking of the changes, you guys, I'm sure you already noticed the last video we just released, the analysis about the Middle East and Russia and so forth. That's the format we're going to be approaching moving forward. So I'm sure for those who have not watched the video yet, we highly recommend that you go and check it out. It's the recent one. And that's the format we're going to be doing in addition to what we are doing here. And of course, we welcome your inputs as always.
And one more thing, I'd love to hear what everyone did for New Year's. So put it in the chat. I'd love to know what you guys did for New Year's. What did you do for New Year's?
What I did?
Yeah.
Oh, I went to bed at 9 o'clock. I don't, I'm not in my 20s. Yeah. I had my share. I feel that when I used to go to Scandinavians, spend New Year's Eve, when I used to go to New York, when I used to go to, but that was back then.
Yeah.
So nowadays, I'm at a stage where, to me, I looked at it like I don't want to abuse it.
Yeah.
I had great memories back then.
Yeah.
Because the world was different. So today it's a different era, but I enjoy it quietly with my wife at home, quiet, had dinner. We just chatted a little bit, and that was it.
That's a wonderful New Year's.
I don't drink alcohol, as you guys know. I don't do.
I don't either. I don't drink either.
That's that. So it was a quiet, peaceful one. But I was thinking about where the world is headed. It's not just all gloom and all that, but I'm thinking of ways how can we sort of contribute to the betterment of humanity.
Right.
And that's what I was thinking about, how we're going to approach the topics. Because we don't want to follow the crowd. That's one, which
absolutely.
I don't do. I don't follow.
Yeah.
And but also wanted to help raise awareness among not only our audience, but around the world. Because to me, that's the objective.
Absolutely.
So fingers crossed that 24 will be different.
Fingers crossed.
All right. Well, let's talk about topic today. Very, very, very interesting topic. Given that if you think about it, as the world was celebrating or welcoming 2024,
it
was a different plans in Washington.
There
No
always
surprising.
are.
To me, it was like, what the heck is going on? It's
Yeah.
almost like I feel policymakers lost sense of directions, have
That
lost it
has to be, that has to be true.
for what's going on. And basically, what is going on is there is a conversation right now. It's not in plan. It's not a what's the word?
It's not official
It's
yet.
not official yet,
Yeah.
and it's not implemented yet.
Right.
But there is a conversation now about pursuing a route by which the US can confiscate. When I say US, I'm referring G7 also. But you're already seeing the discord inside the G7. They are not on board on that.
Right.
So basically, what the US wants is to confiscate the Russian assets of about $300 billion.
Mhm.
You can't do that. You can do that for the fact, like what happened with Iran, for example,
Yeah.
which we just released $6 billion. South Korea released some fund that was frozen regarding the delivery of oil and all that. Even you might have issues with the country, whatever, and you freeze the asset,
Yeah.
you don't have the right to just go and take it.
Right. To just go and take all of that.
Because that becomes what? Stealing, basically. Let's call it as is. And that's not to me, it was like a blatant violation of the law.
Yeah.
No. The only conviction, or the only thing that I am convinced that Washington policymakers are thinking about is to refer to the Treaty of 1864. And back then, it was okay when you go into a fight, for example, you defeat someone, you go over and take over the assets.
Yeah.
The British Navy used to do this back then. And before the captain of whatever ship that is sail back to the UK, will go and confiscate whatever.
Well, an interesting piece of this is that the US is sort of spearheading this. Now, my theory,
the US, yes.
My theory for why that's happening is because we have a very waning support for continuing to support Ukraine here in the United States. And as we're going into an election cycle, continuing to fund conflicts is very unpopular. So if the Democrats, quite frankly, want to continue, or even the Republicans, war is unpopular at this moment, partially because people are starting to wake up and they're really starting to see that this is not okay, especially the younger generations, which, you know, people said, oh, well, you know, the younger generations are lazy and whatever. But the reality is that they're the ones that are really going back and looking at how can we have peace. But we don't have that same support here in the United States because things are so bad here.
Very bad. And this is where it begs the question as to, is this really about Russia?
And that's I agree with that.
About something else.
I agree.
But here is the interesting thing, and this is from Financial Times, by the way, where I read it, the article. And this particular plan is a plan. It's not implemented yet. It's just a plan for now. It's backed by UK, Japan, and Canada.
What a surprise!
Yeah, but what's interesting about that? They are part of a G7,
right?
But that tells you who has no sovereignty or say versus who does.
Yep.
Even though some members of the G7, like, for example, France and Italy, Germany to a degree, they are now expressing doubts.
Yeah.
You know, about a month and a half ago, it was a challenge from none other than Orban, Viktor Orban.
Yeah.
Why did he challenge the EU? It's because they wanted to use funding using Russian assets to support Ukraine. He's like, no. First of all, we're done with this supporting Ukraine nonsense.
Absolutely, yeah.
But to him, what was problematic is having access to a frozen asset of a country. Doesn't matter which country then. Frozen assets are meant to be frozen.
Right.
You don't access them.
Not redistributed.
Yeah. And this is where the problem. So what you're seeing now is the disunity in the EU that exactly emerged right now when the US called for, you all remember, guys, the coalition for the Red Sea?
Yep.
Well, guess who's in it now? Just the UK and Canada. France and Italy and Spain withdrew from it.
Yeah.
And even though our Secretary of Defense, which by the way lied, there were no 20 countries as a member of the coalition. That's a lie, a flat out lie.
Yeah, 20 countries.
That's what he
There's
said.
There's like 2.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
Shame on those politicians. Now they're lying.
Yeah.
Lying straightforward. It's like there is no more standard for speaking the truth anymore. I mean, I'm just appalled by how it has become now. So when they're saying 20 countries supporting the coalition, when there are none, most of the, and now it's falling apart to the point. You know what just happened yesterday? The USS aircraft carrier Gerald Ford left the Mediterranean. Makes you wonder. Yeah. And at the same time as they left, as Israel withdrew 5 brigades. So because we all know, you all know the reality of it. Israel won't be able to sustain itself. It can't. It can't. So the point of this $300 billion, it's not about Russia, in my opinion.
Right.
Why the Europeans are pushing back against? Because they saw the decision of the sanctions really led to. Now you do this to the Russians, you have two options await you, and especially for the Europeans. Because who's going to be suffering into this? Not us. Right. We are far away. It's the Europeans. Russia can do 2 things. He can either cut off diplomatic ties with the US completely, which will be a disaster.
Absolutely.
Mark my word on it. Mark my word on this. Some will say, why not? It's about time. Second is that Russia will ban all the European companies in Russia. Which will be a disaster for European companies. This is exactly where this trajectory is headed. Right. But and in addition to all this, you talk about the legality of it. Is this legal?
Well, so it's interesting that you say that because, first of all, it seems to not be legal. Okay, as it stands right now, it seems to not be legal. And it's interesting because you ask, where would this money be going? Because I think, to me, it's a big question that hasn't really been asked very much in this situation, is where is this money going? So, right now, Joe Biden wants another $61 billion in aid to Ukraine. And they're just, the Congress is just like, is basically saying no. Especially the Republicans are just saying absolutely not. And the people who are paying attention know that this war is more or less over. The Ukrainians have been at a standstill, even interestingly enough, David, to the extent that, what was it? The New York Times came out with an article that was talking about the Ukrainians' recruitment. That they called it people snatchers. Wow. Ukraine's recruiters using harsh tactics to fill ranks. And basically, we did a show about this on Rumble like months ago.
I know.
And New York Times finally caught up. But basically, the Ukrainians don't really want to fight this anymore either, because they're watching the death tolls, they're watching the destruction of their cities. They're watching. To me, this is just my personal opinion. But to me, if you are the president of a country, let's say, Ukraine, and you have an Italian villa and your wife goes on shopping sprees
for
$100,000, you have to ask yourself what really is the motivation going on here. I think it's critical to ask about where is the money going. So the $300 billion, where is it going? Now, remember this from months ago. Who got the contracts to rebuild Ukraine?
And there's no rebuilding anyway.
But who did, right? American companies. BlackRock got a lot of heat actually for more or less being, owners in the companies that are funding the destruction, and then also the rebuilding efforts. If there's no more money coming from the US, where is that money to rebuild?
Shame on America. Some of us Americans, not all, of course, but it's the citizens that have to stand up and wake up, and it's our tax dollars. Do I support this? No, absolutely not.
I don't. Or foreign debt.
Yeah, I won't. And because our country in that case, the people have been so so manipulated beyond
Yeah.
what one can even imagine. It became an honor until it hits them on the head. They'll say, oh, where's the government spending our tax dollars? And that's just the idea of, and later on, you're going to give the money to a failed state. Ukraine.
Yes, absolutely.
Ukraine is a failed state.
Yeah.
This is no different than what it was for some other countries, like in Yemen, what it was back then, like Afghanistan, what it was back then, like Somalia, like, it's a failed state, And for us to say, well, we're going to have to confiscate more Russians' assets. Well, wait a minute. Do you understand? Do you want to say I'm referring to these damn politicians. Do they understand the ramification of something like this? Because you can only, like a bully, how much can you take on before you snap at and Russia can only take so much. And if they snap, it's going to be pretty. This is where my big concern about where this is going. Let me say.
Oh yeah,
thank you to Caramel Crush. I like that screen name. Thank you for your insights and tackling hard topics. You are most welcome. It is important to tackle the hard topics. This is one of them. It is our country, but nonetheless, I still have to criticize my country when it does wrong. And apparently, my country has been doing wrong for a long time, and it's about time for that to change. It's because citizens, productive citizens, is not about just reciting the national anthem and stand there, whatever. A productive citizen is one that can hold the government accountable by challenging its actions when it does wrong. That is what a productive citizens. We all can defend our country. We all stand with whatever. But there is also a time when you stand between what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah.
Straightforward. The actions that now contemplated in Washington, and the funny, they were thinking about this while the world was celebrating the end of the year and beginning.
Okay.
That's what's problematic.
Would you like to know a human behavior tactic that is used
for something like that
all the time?
Yeah.
If you would like to get something through, right? You do it on holidays. If you know, go and look. If you want a really interesting human behavior test, Fridays, a lot of bad news from the government is released on Fridays. Because people don't look over the weekend. And a lot of them are released over the holidays because that's when people are not paying attention. So you think, oh no, news is all equal. Of course they're doing the right thing by everybody. No, they're sneaking it through when you're distracted doing something else. And so they can say, well, we're not hiding it. Obviously it's here. But are they really doing it fair to do that? No, they did it over a time when people were celebrating and not paying attention. Over the holidays, a lot of things happen.
And they do the same for legislations.
Do you know? Absolutely,
when I used to work in Washington, I was living there. So I used to live across the Pentagon over the river. And, you'll say like, oh, Congress is meeting tonight for what? And that's usually when those deals were made behind closed doors. And it was like, whoa. And do American people have any idea? No. And this is similar to that one. So the question becomes, is just will the European, and again, this is not official, it has not been put forth for implementation. They're thinking about ways. As a matter of fact, the article described that, let me just see, how they're going to do it. They're going to do it in form of groups. There will be 3 working groups. And those groups, by the way, proposed by Washington. So the 3 proposed groups proposed by Washington, according to the Financial Times article here, Washington will examine the legal issues around confiscation. That is the term for it. The method of applying such a policy and mitigating risks and options for how the best channel to support to Ukraine. End of quote. That just tells you right this. It's blind stealing, something that doesn't. But that's not what I wanted to highlight. What I wanted to highlight is how Germany, France, Italy, and some other EU members. It didn't say the whole European Union. And you know what they mean by some other EU? It's a reference to Hungary. Have expressed reservations regarding this because they saw what happened when sanctions were applied.
Yeah.
Who ended up holding the end of the stick, economically speaking, was the Europeans.
It was Europeans. So Europeans had gotten very used to very cheap Russian oil and
Not
gas.
anymore.
And so, and it is very interesting that you
Not
bring that
anymore.
up, because
Yeah.
as that situation, who really took the brunt of this? Because for it took, I don't know, maybe about a year or so for people to
Yeah.
start calling it a proxy war between the US and
Yeah.
Russia. And then, you know, because people were like, oh, it's a proxy war, it's a proxy war. And then all of a sudden, somebody in the administration said the quiet part out loud.
Yeah.
And they're like,
what
this is a proxy war with
John
Russia.
Stoltenberg said about NATO.
Right, exactly.
Oh, it's not about NATO.
Well, just kidding. It is about NATO.
Yeah. But here is the issue with this, as you mentioned, it has to do also, speaking of the energy, is because the US reached the highest production last year, 2023. Why do you think that is? Because all that gas was going to Europe.
Yeah.
At 5 or 6 or 7 times the price. What
oh
the
my
Europeans
gosh, absolutely.
So Germans, basically, that's why they're shutting down.
Yeah.
I mean, you all know the company Siemens, right? They should. You know, Siemens is a big German company. It's shutting down some of its plants in Asia. They couldn't afford anymore. And this is another concern now that the Europeans have. But whether they have a concern or not, it becomes the key question. Do they have the political will and determination to say to the US, no?
Well,
and at this point, I don't see that.
So.
I feel comfortable saying, no, they don't.
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but based on what I've been watching for the last 15, 20 years or so, they don't have the political will to take a stand. And because otherwise, they will have challenged the sanctions that end up hurting their citizens. I mean, ask any German citizen, not the government. Ask any Brit citizen. Ask any French citizen. And I have family in Europe. I talk.
Yeah, me too.
They're like, where things are going. It's not where. So it will be interesting to see how they're going to proceed moving forward with this.
Well, and it's interesting because the European countries actually are also starting to have issues with the EU government itself. Because the EU itself is making choices that are not necessarily beneficial
of the citizens,
for the individual countries and the citizens. And so that's been one of the biggest problems overall with the EU. We have that problem here in the United States too. It's not,
but for the EU or NATO for that matter, it becomes the question of relevancy. Are they relevant in today's political climate?
Right.
And majority of people will say, what do you guys think? We're not going to answer that. What do you think? Is the EU and NATO are relevant in the current political landscape on the global stage? Just leave us your answer on the chat box, yes or no, whatever. It's just for us to have a conversation here, no more, no less. But you're absolutely correct. The EU is seeing where that direction is headed, and it kind of like, till when? Because now you start to question the sovereignty of those states. And this is why this proposal backed by 3 already. Canada, UK, and Japan. What do they all share? They all are subversive to the US authority or powers. In other words, in a simple language, they have no real sovereignty. Yes, they are independent states and countries, whatever, on papers. But when it comes down to political actions, they have none, is what the master says, including our neighbor to the north. And usually when we refer to countries, by the way, guys, FYI, we're referring to the government, not the people.
Of course.
I do say, the Canada is gone for, What I'm referring to is to the government, not the people. So I want you always, guys, to same thing I'll say about Japan. Is the Japanese government, not the Japanese people. Same thing about South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, Philippines.
Well, if you look at Japan, for example, what happened after World War II?
Yeah.
Right? Does Japan have a standing army?
No.
No. Why? Because the Allies collectively came together and said, Japan, Germany, you can't have a standing army, right?
Yeah.
So who?
Well, now Germany is reconsidering. What the question will become: are we going to allow them or not? That is the thing.
That's a great question, and I don't know. We have a video coming out about that, a scripted video, probably in the next week or so, coming out about that, about Germany perhaps regaining a standing army. Interesting.
Yeah.
But if you look at Japan, for example, if you look at these very small countries who really don't have armies, or countries whose armies are not as developed, whose militaries, I'll say military because it's broader spectrum than that, that do not have developed militaries, they're at risk. They're weak because they don't have standing military, right? And so what do they have to do?
Yeah.
They have to align themselves with somebody that has a stronger military than the non-existent military that they have, right?
Yeah, but once they align themselves, they become subservient to that authority.
Absolutely.
This is exactly where Japan is. This is where South Korea is. This is where I'm seeing the signs now. Almost, I'm going about 80% about Philippines in this case. Germany, that's 100%.
Yeah.
We have over 40,000 people, 40,000 troops on the soil of a country.
Yeah.
Now, if you have 1,002 small presence, that might be okay.
Right.
But when you have up to 50,000, well, they have no sovereignty. Yeah, you have sovereignty on papers. And this is why now the Europeans, regarding this issue we're talking about, they are having a reservation. They're really having a reservation about seizing now the assets for that. Because here's the thing, and I did find it. This is true. We'll put the link for you guys for the on the description for the article. My brain gets so many because I'm thinking on so many pieces moving together. This is what I spend my day looking into. That is one of the things, guys, we bring you. We don't bring you just whatever. We want you to know the quality of the information we share with you. I'm sure there are a lot of YouTubers out there, everybody calling themselves geopolitical analysts. More power to them. More power to them. So here's the thing. The idea that the concern for Europeans now, especially some companies, like, for example, why do you think Italy is pushing against this? Well, Italy, because he wanted to play, he wanted to hit two birds with one stone. Because Italy just did something about a month and a half ago that just will make your head spin.
What is that? The BRA rejection?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, but why?
Yeah.
Because they were pressured to do so. That means shooting themselves in the foot, economically speaking.
Yeah.
Now they're saying, if we go with what the US is saying, the Euro card, there's a company called Euroclear, Euroclear, which invests about 191 billion euros in sovereign assets that will be held. Well, what's interesting about all this dynamics? Because here's where I say nothing happens in geopolitics in vacuum. Did you know what has happened now in the Gulf states in the Middle East? Their sovereign funds have moved to Asia completely. I had a picture. I'm going to share it with you guys. I have a picture that I saved just for this occasion here. Here's the picture. Public investment fund.
Hold on, let me see if I can see it. Oh, wow.
Yeah. They moved all the assets. Well, when I say they, what am I referring to here? I am referring to the key players like United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Those are like the pillars of the Gulf. They move in their sovereign funds all the way to East Asia. And this is one thing that Europeans are very concerned about.
So I will say one more thing in that regard. So very recently, China has already started actually building a city outside of Baghdad. They have plans.
Yeah, that one was the plan.
Right.
Was plans for.
They have plans to build five more cities inside of Iraq.
That is correct.
So this is very interesting. And the video that we just did that you referenced earlier, guys, it's a
take a look
video
at it.
we released. It's not a live stream. It's a video we released on Russia's influence in the Middle East.
Yeah.
So right now, what we are watching is we're watching Russia, we're watching China actually develop more infrastructure in the Middle East.
Inside the Middle East.
Why is that?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, I was aware of China's role in Iraq when I was in Iraq physically. I spent time, as you all know, guys, I used to work inside Washington for God knows how many years.
many years.
It was, to a degree, it was slightly different back then. I'll admit it. It was slightly different because I remember one incident when I had, if I may share with you guys the personal story here. The boss one time asked me to go with him, the boss. So we'll leave it at that.
Mhm.
And the official from the other country was talking, and he was the prime minister, and was just giving hot air to the
Mhm.
boss. And of course, I speak the language and I know the culture, so I acted also not as an analyst, but
Mhm.
rather an interpreter.
Mhm.
And of course, when you do that, you can add or subtract. You translate
Yeah.
word for exact how it is. You can add or that's
Yeah.
because that's what credibility comes in. And I was known inside the
Mhm.
government for that aspect.
Yeah.
So, later on, when we left the meeting on the car, and the boss told me, Mr. O, why were you shaking your head?
Mhm.
And I said, well, sir, it's because the wording of what that official was trying to convey to you that had nothing to do with the reality on the ground.
Mhm.
And the boss looks at me and said, you mean hot air? I said, yes, sir.
Yeah.
It just
Yeah.
because of protocol. I can't, you know, there
Of course.
are
Of
certain
course. Yeah.
protocols in this
And you
setting.
want to be accurate, right?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
you go with that, then later on. So
Mhm.
my point in all this is to explain that why did we bring this up to begin with?
I
Oh, I
don't know.
forgot.
I don't remember
Yeah,
either. Guys, if you
yeah, it's
remember,
about the
put in
Middle
the
East.
chat.
I got it.
Yeah,
When I was in
China's
Iraq,
influence yeah.
So during that time, the Iraqi government, kicked.
Mhm.
I used the term kicked Exxon out
Yeah.
from Kirkuk at that time because they discovered oil field. And
Mhm.
guess who they gave the contract to? China.
Yeah.
They said, China, you go and explore the fields and so forth. What the reason they're not doing it for free.
No.
China's not doing it
Course not.
for free, but also they know that if they pave the way, knowing how much energy China needs,
Yeah.
China's payment, it won't be in currency, it will be in infrastructure.
Yeah.
And back then, we were like, what the heck is Iraqi government? Because we're the one who put, for example, the former Prime Minister Maliki in power.
Mhm.
We're the one who put. But do you guys know how much asset that guy's had in UK?
Mm.
Ayad Alawi in UK? They're all corrupted. I don't shy away from saying this. But the Iraqis also understood that their future will lie better with the Chinese than it will be with the US.
Well, and if for no other reason, look at the policies that are happening from both countries, right?
Yeah.
So what did the US do when it went into Iraq versus what is China doing as it went into Iraq? And it, you know, in all fairness, when China came in, it was a different situation than when the US went in, okay?
Yeah.
But if you're looking to stabilize a country, there's two ways to do it, right?
Yeah, you don't go in, first of all.
Right. So one, you build up infrastructure, and Iraq needed infrastructure.
Oh, big time.
And then the other is to go in and impose whatever your will is on them through means of war. And one way works better than another way.
That's true.
In terms of getting cooperation from the people that are
The
actually
locals,
there on the
well, actually, China, on the record, and it's on the record there,
Yeah.
you guys can look it up. On the record, they opposed the invasion of Iraq. They did tell the US, you don't want to do this. But, you know, it's kind of, as a matter of fact, now, and I spend a lot of time at the embassy, one of the biggest embassies in the world. You know how much it costs to build that damn thing? About $920 billion.
What?
Yes. That's how much money.
What?
900 million.
Okay. I was like, what did they do?
I'm sorry. 900.
That's
900,
still a lot.
$952 billion.
That's basically $1 billion.
It's a lot.
Which is insanity.
It is a lot. But it's huge. If you see how big.
For $1 billion, it better be giant.
Yeah. Second one, I think, to the one in Australia, if I'm not mistaken. But that's beside the point.
Why do we have a giant one in Australia?
What
do we need a giant embassy?
We own Australia, actually. So now we have US troops being attacked. We don't hear much about this here.
Absolutely.
They've been attacked in Kirkuk. I'm sorry, in Erbil. Yeah. And I spent time in Erbil up north in Kurdistan. They've been attacked over there. We don't hear much about
there's
it.
not much conversation about that at all.
No, you won't.
But yeah, that is it does seem more and more. I mean, we're getting off of our Russia topic and on to the Israel Middle East sort of topic for a second. But there does seem to be some sort of concerted effort to try and drag Iran into what's going on.
It's because
That
what's
needs
going
to
on.
not happen.
Yeah, what's going on in Washington? There are those behind the scenes neocons pushing for war with Iran. As a matter of fact,
That's a bad
because
idea,
because the
guys.
lobbyists of the Israeli government is pushing the legislator. Did you hear what that idiot Lindsey Graham said?
He
What?
says the craziest things I have ever
That
heard.
tells you how it's about time for him to leave.
Oh my gosh.
But you know, he doesn't have kids. He doesn't understand. Are those politicians going to send their own?
No.
I mean, come on.
And that's interesting because you're right. It's very, very rare.
No,
it's
they
very
won't.
rare.
And if they go, well, that's my daddy, so and so.
Mhm.
Oh, I ain't gonna go to the front line.
Right.
So that is where no, he's pushing, and they are pushing for war. They're not gonna have a war with Iran. That's one. Second, if it is the case, you're talking about a major, and Iran is no
Big
Iraq.
problem,
The abilities, the one thing, and I'm gonna repeat this again because I've said it so many times, guys.
Mhm.
The one thing that is preventing us from moving forward when it comes down to Iran is because we do not know what type of capabilities they have.
Yeah.
You remember when I showed the picture about the hypersonic missile?
Yep.
They showed that they just deployed, as a matter of fact, Iran 3 days ago deployed their destroyer to the Red Sea. Is this why the U.S. aircraft carrier left?
Yeah. No.
What do you guys think?
Right.
What do you guys think?
Agreed.
Did the U.S. aircraft carrier Gerald Ford left the Mediterranean Sea because Iran deployed its destroyer, and this destroyer is very advanced system?
Yep.
What do you guys think? So yeah, just to wrap up this one here before we move to the next topic, the idea of now confiscating, or we may use the term as is, stealing.
Yeah.
It's not right. It is not right. Yeah, you might have tensions with countries, and sometimes countries enter into the confrontations and so forth. But once you freeze the assets, you can't touch that. Yeah. Second thing that bears the big question and the big elephant in the room: who gives us the right to decide who we're gonna freeze, whose assets we're gonna freeze, and who's not?
And especially for a country that's not being directly Russia did not come into the United States. Russia went into Ukraine.
Yeah, for a reason.
And definitely, absolutely for a reason. Yeah. It is in fact about NATO, despite the fact that everyone told you for a long time it was about NATO.
Yeah.
But the country who has invaded, whatever you want to call it, right? The country that is invaded is not the one that is doing this.
Yeah.
It is a country that is supposedly just sort of far out of reach in NATO, but not quite. But if it's not about NATO,
what was it about?
What is the US doing there?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? If it's not about NATO and it's not about the United States, why is the United States the one pushing for this? It's not Ukraine, although Zelensky, I'm sure, is drooling. It is not about Ukraine. Ukraine's not the one spearheading this. United States is. What business does a country that is technically not involved have doing that?
Well, did you know that comedian President Zelensky already requested immigration status in the U.S.?
I do, and that is
and so funny that was done through the visit of the Secretary of Defense, and you know what he told them? It wasn't disclosed much, and what he told them is, I need to have this in writing.
Yeah.
You know why? Because we've done this before with others.
Right.
When we end up dropping the ball, and those end up their aircraft, something happened to it, whatever. So he wanted to have, nothing is officially yet signed.
Yeah.
But if he ends up here, he's gonna be in Florida. There is a county there.
Oh yeah, that's right.
There is a county in Florida. I forgot the name of the county where the paper has been filed. Makes you just wonder, is he going to be there along with, let's say, Ursula von der Leyen, for example, the former Japanese prime minister? Who else can we think of?
I don't know. I think he's going. I think he's going to his villa in Italy.
Well, Italy is just one of the.
I mean, Florida's beautiful, okay. But if you had the choice between a villa in Italy or Florida,
it's because, believe it or not, you might be shocked to find out that he might pick the U.S. he's more protected here than he will be
definitely
in Italy. They will be, and that guy's end. It's not going to be pretty. Mike, my word on it.
Well, just because, you think you don't really hear about these leaders anymore after this sort of stuff happens.
Yeah.
Until you hear about they had a plane crash
or something.
So,
but that's exactly
out
what
of the blue.
Yeah. This is why all this idea of now stealing those assets, it could, in my opinion, it's going to trigger far complicated problems, especially if Russia retaliates, which most likely it will.
Yeah.
The retaliation is not in the military format, but if they decide to cut off diplomatic ties with the US or relations with the US, it's bad news.
I agree.
Now, just as a geopolitical analyst, I always have to think ahead. Hypothetically, should this happen, what can we expect? Well, what would you expect is you will have now the world officially split into the multipolarity, but with one camp on one end that includes Russia, China, Iran, North Korea, global South. And you have the other side that includes the US, its allies, those are subversive states, Canada, Germany, France, the EU.
Well, unfortunately,
that's what we're going to be seeing.
The US's allies, you have the EU, which is obviously a very strong economy, but it's nowhere near, for example, China's economy, and it's nowhere near, for example, the US's economy. So a lot of the US allies are, number one, weak in resources. And I think maybe that's the biggest key here. If you look at the multipolar allies, the global South, whatever you'd like to call it, right? We know what countries those are.
And even when you say global South, there's now a conversation about should we consider Australia as part of the global South?
Well, physically where it is, but where its allegiances are, politically no.
You can't trust Aussies.
But if you're looking at which set has the most resources, you're really looking at Russia is actually very resource rich. China is either very resource rich or really good at securing.
It's good at securing. China doesn't have a lot.
Right. But they're good at securing resources.
But what's important now, the reason why you are noticing, for example, and this is a side note, just why you're noticing now the tensions in South China Sea again to the Philippines. And that was directed at the resources, the discovery of gas, which is about 12% in that part of the world.
Wow.
So now you can see why we're going to have to push Philippines to the forefront. I use the term in the other channel, I use the term pawn. I know somebody misunderstood what I was referring to. I use the term pawn to further the conversation, to help the audience think outside the box a little bit. This particular individual, who happens to be from Philippines, misunderstood me, what I was referring to.
I mean, honestly, and you know who you are, there are people who get upset about every little thing on.
It's unfortunate because to me, when you want to hear something that is objective, be prepared to accept the truth that you never expect to hear.
Right.
And be and willing to deal with that.
Right.
To me, that's the way I see it. I'd rather have someone look at me in my eye here and tell me the truth as is.
Me too.
I'll take it.
Hands down.
I'll take it.
And the thing about telling the truth is that there's a saying that goes, you can't see what's in the darkness until you shine a light on it.
No.
And then once you shine that light on it, what you find really isn't going to be what you want to find, right? But you have to shine that light on it so that can get cleared out. So the more we shine a light on what's going on, the more there's a chance for it to change. The more that there is a chance for it to clear out.
And that's exactly what are we doing here. Let me say thank you to Taharka for your super sticker. You wrote, Happy New Year. Thanks for the important information. You are most welcome. And greatly appreciate you being here.
Wait, there's more. There's more.
Let me
you see it?
That's Rabbi Lee gifted. Oh my gosh.
Oh
my gosh.
Wow, thank you.
Thank you so much. And I hope the individuals who've been gifted this, please say a word of thanks to Rabbi.
I think Rebbe did this before. I think he gave
I
another
think so.
five.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, David, I think this puts us over 100.
That's so
So
generous.
do you know what that means?
Yeah, we promised.
Mhm.
I only follow what I say. If I promise,
Absolutely.
you know me, I don't say just thanks for the sake of saying them. If I'm not able to follow through, I don't say them.
Absolutely. Well, it's
So
time
we
to
did,
do it.
Yeah, we did promise, guys, the members.
Mhm.
Once we reach 100, we're gonna do an exclusive Q&A for the members.
So now
if you want to be part
yep.
of that, just join the membership.
And keep your eye out for it because
Yeah.
we are at 100 now. So
Yeah, well, we promised we're gonna do it. Yeah, we'll
Let's
announce
do
it a
it.
few days ahead.
Mhm.
And who's to say? It would be nice if we have 200 members.
All right.
That would be nice. Why not? So,
also really quickly, guys, we're going on Rumble live afterwards. The link is below, but it's rumble.com basically /geopolitics and conflict. We can talk way more freely on Rumble than we can here on this platform. We love YouTube and we love you guys here on YouTube, but sometimes we want to say what we want to say.
More. You're right.
And so that's right down there at Rumble, and we're doing that immediately after this. Give us like 10 minutes afterwards.
Let's say also Sun Hook. Hey,
thank you
so much for your super sticker. First time I saw this name here.
These are except for Rebbe, these are kind of the new names. Thank you.
Welcome to the community. Greatly appreciate your support. So yeah, we need to set up a date for the live Q&A for the members as promised. And between now and then, should you decide to support our channel here, please consider either becoming a member or supporter, whatever you feel comfortable.
Oh, David, we got one more. Iris.
Let's see it.
Iris Chu.
Wow.
Thank you so much.
Greatly.
And a happy new year.
Greatly.
To all of you. Thank you.
Greatly appreciate it. Greatly appreciate it. So, all right. What else we need to cover? Just to wrap this up.
Yeah.
Then we'll take a question.
Yeah, let's do questions.
Because we're going to talk about Israel and what's going on in the Middle East.
Yeah,
on the other channel.
On Rumble.
On
yes.
Rumble, so.
Check out our Rumble immediately after this.
Yeah. So just to wrap this up, guys, so far the idea of the U.S. contemplating this plan, they're going to have the working. They want to have this ready by the second anniversary, which means by February 24th. 2024. That's where they want this to be prepared. I don't see it moving forward, but the idea of the confiscation is feasible.
Yeah.
The US can do that, but also this is a much bigger than just the Russians. This one now highlights the fear.
Yeah.
I use the term, the fear and concern in Washington about the demise of the US dollar. Because this is
agree.
exactly what this is all about.
Yeah.
Is the long term. And we are very, very concerned because the sanctions have not.
Yeah.
The sanctions had only strengthened certain countries in going faster when it comes down to de-dollarization.
Right. Which is not what it wanted.
And that shows the idea of the dollar is at a risk moving forward. Could this be one of those? Because if you look at the Russian economy, you guys can look it up yourselves. We're not going to just tell you, you can look it up. The Russian economy performed better than it did before the military operations in Ukraine. That did before the sanctions imposed by the US and the West. So, and the financial system has been strengthened through bilateral trade in local currencies between Russia, other countries around China, some countries even in the Middle East and so forth. All this sends a signal to Washington. The days of the dollar are numbered.
Yeah.
It might not be, we're not talking next year, we're not talking next 2 years, but it will happen eventually. And in my opinion, this is what it's all about. It's not about Russia. It gives you an idea about what we'll expect in 2024.
Yeah.
Because the US just did another major thing.
Thing?
Wanted to claim territory in the Arctic.
Oh, yeah. We're going to do a show about that.
And that's very, very concerning.
Well,
very concerning.
So
I wrote a book about the.
Do you have it? Do you have it over there?
It's over there.
Okay. The Russia book.
Yeah, about Russia.
Yeah,
well, I devoted an entire 2 pages, I think, or 3 pages about the Arctic because from geopolitical and economic aspects.
Well,
and I did forewarn that the competition is going to get fierce, and I will not be surprised that the US will allocate assets. And here it is.
Well, the thing is, whoever claims the shipping lanes in the Arctic, and this is something no one is talking about, but they absolutely should be.
Yeah, this is exactly what the US is planning.
So important.
I have a map over here.
Oh,
if you look
great.
at where it is, see this Bering Sea here?
Yeah.
That's where the shipping lane is going to be.
Right.
Because the melting ice.
Right.
And that in itself, when you consider $35 trillion worth of untapped natural gas, oil, and natural resources and so forth. But that's going to turn into geopolitical tensions, which means, as I wrote in the book, the Arctic to Russia is what Berlin was to the West. I talked about it way back. I said, Mike, my word, it will be just a matter of time before this competition is going to get fierce.
Well, China's also involved.
Well, that's the caveat you add to all this. This is not about just Russia and Arctic states. The caveat is now you add China to the contest. Why?
Absolutely.
Because China is putting money on the table for investment routes.
Well, out of all of the China, that's China's big thing, right? If you're looking at basically what China is doing, they're going out and economically, you can use the word conquering if you want, but I don't necessarily mean conquering in the same way.
I know what you mean.
That,
I know what you mean.
But just, in case there's any misunderstandings in the comments, okay? But that is their MO, is going out and more or less conquering economics.
Well, you can change that term for forging. Forging ties with whomever, because those will be done in conjunction with others. China's not doing it on its own per se. That's in conjunction with same thing in Africa. There are those who are saying that, the debt trap and all that stuff, which is nonsense anyway.
Well, and that has yet to be seen. We don't.
Well, we're doing the same with the IMF. How do you think we're doing? Well, I don't know that it's even worse.
It's way worse.
Yeah.
I don't know that anyone is going to argue that the IMF is out here doing. There are countries that are still paying off their loans from the 70s and 80s.
Argentina, that I'm aware of.
Speaking of Argentina, Argentina just did a big crazy thing that was almost the topic of this.
Yeah, maybe we need to do a live. You guys, would you like to have a live on this topic?
It absolutely deserves it, I think. It absolutely deserves it.
Well, let's see what the audience wants. Also, I'd like to have their input into this. Would you like us guys to cover what just happened in Argentina? Or there's a new president, Javier Milei just did.
Wild choice on his part. But they're still paying off their debts. What is it, from the 80s, I think?
80s.
From the IMF. That is insanity to still be paying that off at this point, because the amount that they originally got versus what they've paid.
Yeah.
Because of course it's with interest.
Well, that interest is tied to the US dollar.
I know.
Interest here. So when we raise interest rate, we further putting those countries down in debt.
Yep.
That is exactly what we're doing. So
hey, we got some absolutely yes. Yes.
Then that's it.
Okay.
That's it.
Argentina live, yes.
Yeah.
Argentina, what a shame, yes.
That's it.
All right.
We go by what?
Guys.
Because here's the thing.
Caramel Crush said yes.
That's it. This is what we do. What the audience.
TNT said yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
What our audience wants. Because the way I look at it in a community, this is where that conversation goes two ways.
Yeah.
It's not just us talking. Yeah, we're doing the talking and whatever. But it's still, your input is very crucial and important for this community, because if we are to raise awareness, we will have to count on you. We will have to count on your support. We will have to count on your conversation, contribution to the conversation. We'll have to count on your ability to sort of spread the word about it. And otherwise, we can't do it alone. Like I always say, can you clap with one hand?
Nope. Like, kind of.
Well, I can't even hear it. Even
but no, there's no us
you
without
got the
you
idea.
guys. Yeah, absolutely.
So this is what we're gonna do. All right. Well, let us take one question or two, because we're gonna guys go to Rumble. Just jump in on Rumble. Just give us a time to go get some water or whatever, and we'll jump in on Rumble. And we're gonna talk about What are we going to talk about on Rumble in Israel? Right? What's going on?
Well, Israel.
Well, there is a lot going
We're
on.
going to talk a little bit more about also Ukraine and Russia. Some of the things that we can't really talk about here.
Okay.
And
that's it. We'll do that.
TNT gave us a super sticker. Let
Where is
me
TNT?
do that.
TNT,
Okay.
by the way.
Thank you.
Oh my gosh, TNT. We can't thank you enough, man. I remember your first time way back.
Yeah.
When TNT put a super sticker for us way back. And I kind of, the first time I saw the name, I had this.
With the little ghost.
Well, not only that, is the TNT.
Yeah.
And do you want me to share the story?
Yeah,
it's
please.
a personal story.
Is it?
Well, for me,
yeah.
When I read the TNT, I had almost a laugh a little bit. Why? Because when I was back in military and governments and all that stuff, we used to travel. So when I would travel, sometimes I'll have to go and attend some tests. Well, one of them was a TNT. That we had, because you have to see.
Yeah.
Because to understand and I went through the testings of certain things, including gas.
My husband also.
I had to go through gas chamber and all that. It's just part of. It's controlled.
Right.
And all that, but you can't be talking about things without experiencing them.
Well, and to know that your gear works and to know that to have that experience.
Well,
that you don't
this one
lose
was
your mind.
the TNT was put on a van under. I put a mount of TNT and we just went to the bunker, blew it. Oh my God. That in the Esco, you can only imagine why nobody will survive something like that. So the first time I saw TNT, when you put that, I was like, all right, guys. No, that's usually personal stories. I usually don't talk much about my private life, but I don't mind.
All right.
Let's take a question or two.
Okay, let's take. I saw Army with Harmony. I saw you earlier there. Okay. And Army with Harmony is on all of our channels, which I really appreciate, from Canada. Question: why are American taxpayers on the hook for protecting billionaires' assets in the Red Sea? Are they unable to provide their own? Are there no private armies they can hire?
Yeah, you hit the nail on that. It's how corrupted the system is.
Yeah.
This is why the billionaires don't pay taxes. And their argument is, we are providing jobs.
Right.
This is why the middle class in America is the one that carrying the weight. Did you guys know that if it weren't for the middle class, American economy will... It's the middle class that, and the way to look at that, you look at the tax brackets, where the middle class is taxed versus the millionaires, billionaires, and so forth.
Absolutely.
And versus the ones at the lower end of society. Those I understand. They don't have money.
Right. Oh,
so
absolutely.
What would you do?
Absolutely.
You have to have some compassion for. If you don't have money to pay, then those at the top, their argument is we're creating jobs and all that stuff, so the government can do that. That leaves you with the middle class. And this is the ones that is now, even the incompetent Biden now, they're thinking about putting taxes on old fridge because they argue that, or stoves, whatever, emission, this environment crap stuff.
Well, the thing is, so the middle class in the United States is dwindling substantially. It's a very big problem. But, you tax people to the extent that they can't buy things anymore. What are they going to do?
Well, so what history have taught us about the French Revolution, when that gap started to be widened, and this is exactly what is happening.
Right. That's exactly what's happening here.
That's a great question. Thank you so much for that.
Okay. And then let's do one more. Harry C. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Do you think that a new norm is coming for the superpowers to block each other on the world stage?
Wow, that's I don't know how to answer that one. It's not my realm. For all I know is that, which maybe one day we'll do a talk about it on Rumble, as to what the global elites are planning on. I just got a hold of the list of Epstein. And the names on it.
Oh, maybe we should talk. Maybe we should talk about that on Rumble in a second.
Here,
no,
because what's the names on it?
Yeah.
And so the idea of, and we do need to talk to our audience about that, because we want to help them understand what lies ahead.
Right.
We can't say it here because they censor. You all know the story. We don't need to beat the dead horse here. No, they're not going to block each other, because they are all converging their what's the word, their need for control, because the control over the world is not going to be by one individual or two. It's going to be by a collective handful in a single digit. That is where the concern is. In a single digit. And how that control is going to happen, well, of course, this is why they push for the idea of you don't need to own this and that, and just look where things are going to end up if you end up depending on the government. Let alone, are you going to trust the government? It will be a mistake if you do.
Well, and the thing is, the world right now is so hard. It's so hard to live a good, happy, healthy life, especially in the Western world and especially in the United States. And so the more desperate people get, there's a certain set that turn to the government because they want someone to take care of them. And in a sense, understandably, because as things get harder, some people just want to give up. And you can say, oh, well, I would never want to give up. But man, I've been in time. There have been times in my life where things have been very hard and I have wanted to give up. But you don't. You rise and you take your life into your own hands and you really work on it. But there's the other part that says this is not what we want, and we want something better for our country, and that's where we are. Is we want something better for our country.
That's true. All right,
we got one more super sticker from Alanimseen. I pronounce that wrong every time.
Alanimseen from Canada, our neighbor to the north. Thank you so much, Alanimseen. As always, greatly appreciate your continued support. It means a lot to us, guys. So, well, we hope you guys can go. There's the link to the Rumble. We're gonna be there shortly. Just give us time to switch things around and all that, and we will see you there. I don't like saying we'll see you on the other side.
Oh yeah,
but it's too early for that.
Well, and everybody said yes to the Argentina video, so we're gonna do an Argentina live stream.
When?
I don't know, sometime this week.
We'll do it sometime soon. So anyway, guys, hope you find this very informative, and once again, please hit that like button, which truly appreciate it, and make sure to share this video with others and subscribe if this is your first time here. Look forward to seeing you next time. As always, prepare yourself for changing world order. Till next time. Bye-bye.